Good morning. Welcome to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. It's Monday morning, sun shining, everything's good in the world. And I'm joined by a full house today. I'm joined by Alison McConnell. How are you, Alison?
Very well, thanks, Tony. Yourself?
Yes, indeed. And the return of Sean Martin. Sean, how you doing? How was your week off?
Aye, good stuff, Tory. I enjoyed it. Good to be back.
Good to be back, yeah.
Aye.
Kind of getting the band back together. We like that, don't we? You know? Yes, indeed. Yes, well, first things first, do the plug for the sponsor. There they are, you can see them in the top of your screen and the bottom. One Football app. Get downloading the One Football app, ladies and gentlemen. The one-stop football shop for scores, news, lineups, transfer rumours, live streaming and match highlights, and much more than that. You can immerse yourself in the digital football experience and have the best personal one out there. That's the One Football app. It's very, very good, as you can see on the screen. The link's in the description, so have a go at that. And running along the bottom, the ticker tape, as you can see, have a 30-day trial on us. You'll see all sorts of wonderful articles on the website, and you'll see the pod as well. 30 days, go on, do it for free. You know what to do. Hit the subscribe button, www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. There you are. Now, Sean, in your absence, the fixtures came out.
Yep.
On Friday. We didn't get your wonderful views on the fixtures, if you had any. So I'll come to you first and ask your thoughts on the big one, Livingston versus Rangers, kicking off the 2020 season, and Celtic playing Aberdeen 24 hours later. Now, what was your thoughts, Sean, when you saw the fixture announcement?
I like that you've already thought that my views are going to be wonderful despite not knowing them. To be honest, I probably thought much the same as you guys. The first game's actually a good one, I think. Not just because it's at home, but I think it's arguably a good time to play Aberdeen as well, because they've obviously got Jim Goodwin, who's only just in the door. They'll have a League Cup group stage to play before that game, obviously. But given they're in a group with Peterhead, Dumbarton, Wraith and Stirling Albion, I think it's one of those groups for a team of Aberdeen's ilk that they can only really slip up rather than anything else. And so far, how slow they've been to recruit while the Calvin Ramsey transfer was being negotiated is kind of irking a lot of their fans. So I think it's a good time to play them. The first day of the season, flag day, all of that. I was a wee bit surprised it was the Sunday slot. I thought that would get the Saturday lunchtime slot. Just because it's the champions and stuff. It's not something to get massively irate about, but it's an oddity that can help me regardless. But apart from that, it's obviously the first one everybody looks for, is the first derby. That being a Saturday before the Champions League group stage kicks off is worth a note on it.
Yeah.
It won't get moved to the Sunday for that reason, which might make a nice change for people actually. But that said, I did think the SPFL maybe made a rod for their own back near the time if Rangers end up in the Europa League again. I don't know what you thought about that.
Yeah. There's every chance, isn't there? Sorry, Alison, on you go.
Oh yeah, I was just about to say the same thing. You get a question mark then over the Saturday and the Sunday fixture. The other notable one for me was the Christmas Eve card. Full card and Christmas. In fact, I think Rangers are at Dingwall on Christmas Eve.
Yeah. Celtic at St Johnstone, which is a decent one actually for Christmas Eve.
But I mean the Dingwall one, it's just like a lack of common sense, really. I think when you look at fixture lists and stuff like that. But I think it's so unusual to have a game on Christmas Eve and then not have a Boxing Day fixture.
Mm-hmm.
And I think obviously just coming back off the World Cup, you'll have a lot of players potentially just coming back and question marks over how leggy they might be.
No, I think, Tony, just that's after the break as well. That you've got to remember there's a break in there. But I mean, in general, just the overarching view that I had looking at the fixture list was just basically what Alison's been pointing out a lot, which is the sheer intensity of it. Because of that break for the World Cup. I mean, it's 23, potentially 24 if Celtic get through the first League Cup tie. Competitive fixtures in the 105 days from July 31st to November 12th. So just over 4 days, basically, just over every 4 days, basically, you could say it's a competitive fixture for Celtic. Which, all right, people could argue that it's always a bit busy schedule for Celtic, but nonetheless, it's still going to be some undertaking. And it's precisely why, and this is me starting already, that there needs to be serious element of squad depth to manage it.
Alison, that's the thrust of your column piece this morning, stats that Sean just quoted there, 23/24 in 105 days, is it? Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, 105. Right.
Alison's written a piece on the website today. Very good piece it is. Go and check it out. It is an intense period. We spoke about that, Alison, on Friday, just after the fixture were announcing. It was yourself that highlighted that, culminating in the piece that's on the website today.
Yeah, it's incredibly intense. I would agree with Sean. I think you do need considerable strength and depth to cope with it. I think it's not just the multitude of games that you're playing, but also the level with which you'll be playing at when you consider that there'll be Champions League games in there too. So I think recruitment will be key over the next few weeks. I think you want to have a strong pool. I think Celtic have had quite a big squad. Even last season, I think it was quite a bloated squad. But I think what you need is a squad where you genuinely have first-team quality players, even if they're not all playing every week. You need players pushing, which I think is why Siegrist is a welcome addition in terms of just keeping up the competition, and Joe Hart. But I think you do need to have serious strength, because as you saw last season, in fact you saw it over a couple of times last season, that if you have injuries to same positions at times, that all of a sudden you can look very threadbare. We saw it in the opening months of the season last year, when there seemed to just be this stop-start element in getting players back and other players going out. And then even in the second half of the season, at one point, you almost had that full front three out simultaneously. So I think you need to factor in it's to be expected over the course of a campaign, and never more than a season like this one, where there's a whole host of games coming quickly, and then the World Cup. And Celtic will have, I'm not sure off the top of my head what the numbers are, but Celtic will have a sizable number of first-team players who will then go and play at the World Cup and come back. It's a fairly punishing schedule for players to be playing continuously. If you look at the last month, guys like Callum McGregor and Greg Taylor all still playing football and not given much of a break. I think you're going to need to have legs in there, and you're going to need to have players who can step up and genuinely make an impact at first team level.
Yep, Patrick McLaughlin comes in, Sean. We need 24, 25 players. It's not about starting 11s. We're lucky to have the same 11 3 games in a row during this period. Alison mentioned the fact that that Celtic had a lot of players out in the same position at various months of the season last season. Although I did like this comment, I think you've starred it, Sean, from Paul Byrne. Just play Harry Kane. If Jota doesn't sign, that's always an option, isn't it? But I think since last June, July, when we started the pod, we've been banging on about it, haven't we? Strength and depth. Still banging on about it, and we will continue to bang on about it, I'm sure. And knows the score on that front. But again, Sean, linked with a plethora of players, which everybody who's on social media will know. We made an exec deck that we're not just going to take every one of them and start talking, because it's pointless in case they don't sign. But there are a few that maybe the interest is stronger than others. And also, we get every day the Daily Jota. Give us this day our Daily Jota, Sean. So, and nothing seems to move on that front.
No, well, or as Jerry called him, Phineas Fogg.
Yes, he's still on his world tour. Yes, exactly.
But no, I mean, with the Jota thing, again, it is one of those things you don't want to keep saying the same thing every day. So in other news, water is wet, the sky is blue, Tony's got a wardrobe. I don't know what else. I don't know what else to say, really, now. But
yes, indeed. But something that I've written on the web over the weekend, Sean, and Eric Sviatchenko was talking about Matt O'Reilly's chances of nailing a place in the Denmark squad, and he said he has every chance, but he didn't say it was a stick-on, but he did say playing in the Champions League, because the Danish manager, puts real stock in playing at the highest European levels. So he reckons that a good showing in that could see him, certainly knock the door and possibly kick it in.
Aye. I mean, I've put the link in the comments as well. He was talking to you, wasn't he? Just talking. But I think it was a fair point. It's never a stick on, especially when you're not in the squad already.
Yeah.
But you've got to remember, he's only just declared for Denmark. he's impressed at the youth level. That's the natural progression. I mean, I've said to the both of you before, especially when we did the power rankings episode, that I expect him to emerge as one of the contenders for our player of the season in the next campaign. It's always hard to say for sure someone will continue to perform, especially in O'Reilly's case with the lack of Tom Rogic, which I would actually argue is both a blessing and a curse for him. A blessing in that it gives him more game time as the chief creative force in the middle, but a curse in that, as it stands, that means a lot of games and therefore a lot of responsibility to do it basically, well, as I say, every 4 days or so. But basically his World Cup chances come down to the question of whether you think he's going to continue to improve with that responsibility, and I do. I think a Denmark senior shout will just naturally follow, and hopefully for him that means a chance to do it at a World Cup as well.
Alison, Eric Sviatchenko said he sees a lot of similarities in Jota, Tom Rogic and Matt O'Reilly. Do you agree with that?
Yes and no. I think I think there are certain physical attributes. I think both are very athletic players. I think O'Reilly's slightly different. The first thing I'd say is I think Tom Rogic is assured of his place in Celtic folklore, given what he contributed over the decade that he was there. I think O'Reilly is a bit more... I think that there's a bit more in terms of his attacking prowess at times. I think he's also willing to put the work in terms of getting back and contributing in the middle of the park. I think he's a very exciting player. I think just what you've seen from him in the opening 6 months, I think you forget just how young he is when you're talking about the fact he's still eligible for under 21 level at football. I think he has a telling contribution to make this season. I think he'll be pivotal to the way that Ange Postecoglou plays, and I think he'll be pivotal to across the depth of this season, both at Champions League level and domestic level. I think he's a very exciting talent, and I think much more is still to come from him. I think you can expect goals from him, but I also think there's a bit of dig as well there in the middle of the park.
I tend to agree with Andrew there. I'd mentioned it before previously that Turnbull and O'Reilly could share that spot and rotate it if the manager's thinking is to bring in a kind of midfield enforcer or a more physical player in the midfield, play McGregor and one of those two as his middle three. I just thoughts off the top of my head. I'm not saying he will, but my thoughts on O'Reilly and Turnbull as well. I think they're both terrific footballers and will make a telling contribution. It wouldn't surprise me if Matt O'Reilly claimed a place in the Danish squad that heads to Qatar, to be honest, because I think, and one of the contributors said he thinks he's ready for it. I certainly think he's ready for it as well. And I think
I think that's a great comment there, Tony. Yeah, I think that's what kind of stands out about him a wee bit to me. But
yeah, and what I've spoken before, that when he speaks, he doesn't speak like a 21-year-old. He speaks like he's listening to the manager and reinforcing the manager's message when he's talking to people like ourselves. And he's very, very level-headed, and he looks like an old head on young shoulders, very much so. Yeah, and I think there's a captainness about him when he plays football. He makes it look very easy. And Paul Lambert said something to me that the great players are defined by their kind of 1 and 2 touch football. That's what really defines them as great footballers. And he said Matt O'Reilly's got it. We saw that very early. Paul Lambert said watch his 1 and 2 touch stuff. He said he's very, very good. And I kind of noticed it when Haggerty scored. Remember in February the curler beyond Alan McGregor in the Rangers game, and it was O'Reilly's just quick shunt that opened up the space. And did it without thinking, 1 touch, and Haggerty's curled it. So I was looking out for more and more of that, and I started to see it with O'Reilly. And someone said he's got an eye for goal as well. Yeah, he started to show that at the end of the season. So long may that continue.
That's something I would be looking for more from him. Remember when I done the scouting report on him, it was it might surprise you, but his kind of shooting accuracy was worse than Ryan Christie's, which was something I just like to point out just because I'm a known Christie apologist, I suppose. But that is something he kind of showed a wee bit of an eye for goal, but I would certainly want more from him in that respect. I think primarily that he's there as a creator. But it's always good, as you can see with Turnbull, it's always good if you can not only add to set-piece creativity and open play creativity, but if you can add to it with goals as well, then your stats not only look more impressive, but you are actually contributing a wee bit more as well.
Now, Alison, one of the players that Celtic have been really linked with is Alexandro Bernabe from Lanus. Now, last night, he looked dynamite on the ball, but unfairly got a red card last night. Now, we spoke
Alexandro Mulgrew, you mean?
Yes. We spoke off air and we said the touch of the Charlie Mulgrew, Kyle Lafferty's about it with the headbutt and the way he went down. But everybody tuned in, a lot of Celtic tuned in to watch that, and they seem to be impressed by him. But I think he's gone out in the Zinedine Zidane blaze of glory there, or whatever you want to call it, with the headbutt. But I mean, it's like everything else. You're looking at scouting reports, you're looking at the news links, and he's been heavily linked with Celtic. I don't know if you had a chance to see any footage of him, Alison, but he certainly fits the bill, doesn't he?
Yeah, well, I think
not to put you on the spot, but yeah.
I'm sure he'll probably be a bit embarrassed at the red card last night. I think his opposite number made a real meal of it. I think he kind of leaned into him, but I think in the game just now, I just don't think you can have any intent or any nod towards violence in any shape or form. So I'm sure he'll probably be a bit embarrassed at the red card. In terms of the linking with Celtic, yep, I think he has been fairly heavily linked over the last week or 10 days or so. It's obviously a player that Celtic have looked at or look to add to the squad. But I think what you can expect over this summer is 100 names over the next 6 weeks or so that'll all be linked. And I think it can be a difficult time to identify which of those are correct. I think it takes a lot of time to go through, a lot of talking to people to try and establish the credibility of some things. But what I think you can see just now is the areas of the pitch that Celtic are clearly looking to identify.
Yeah, I agree with that, Sean, completely, don't you?
Yeah, that's exactly what I would take from it, that you can see the consistency of position, if not consistency of name, with who's linked. And even the way you could ask most fans, and it is those positions that they seem to be targeting. So that suggests a wee bit of joined up thinking that you could argue hasn't been there in certain transfer windows in the past. So it does bode well in terms of individuals. Once they sign, you'll see how it pays off, that kind of thing. But I've put the link to our scouting report on Bernabe in there, because it is quite a heavy link anyway. So we've got that up for you. But that position. That again, I've taught myself a Ryan Christie apologist. You know, my Greg Taylor apologist as well. But that is a position that they need more competition in. So
that's the only reason I put that in. Mentioned his name because it is a heavy link. It's not just
and it also helps when he makes headlines with headbutting somebody
for all the wrong reasons. Is that what you're saying, Sean? Yes.
Blot your copybook before you've arrived.
But a lot of Celtic supporters were taking that as, yes, I like that. You know what I mean? Yeah, but you have to channel that aggression, Alison, as you said, that's kind of bordering on violence, really, isn't it? Sticking the head in somebody's
Listen, in the current climate of the game, you can't have any of that. You can't react at all. And if you do, you run the risk of a red card. And I think you could find yourself sued under the Trade Descriptions Act for calling it a headbutt, but I think you see the intent that's there, and that's what he's been dismissed for.
Yes, indeed. But as you say, Sean, we'll not dissect every name because it's a pointless exercise, because a lot of them won't probably sign for Celtic. But we can't go by without mentioning the Daily Jota. Where is he? Where is he on his travels now? Still on holiday?
I'll need to get an article up with a wee map. Just follow out. See, like the Indiana Jones films when it's got the red line going through stuff. I'm going to absolutely cop out on this and just ask you to use your opinion because I'm the one reading it out. But the Sons of Scotland were a good question here, and it's all hypothetical, of course. And I hope that it doesn't actually become a real question. But if this keeps dragging on, how long do they give Jota before they do start looking elsewhere?
I think that's a really sensible question. I think it's a very sensible question. And I think that does start to come into it because you can't afford to sit and twiddle your thumbs and be caught cold, given the fact that there is a bit of breathing space, I think, this summer in a way that there isn't normally, because you don't have the Champions League qualifiers coming early July. But at the same time, I think you need to have a very strong indication. And if it is a case of quibbling over small matters in terms of the contract, maybe over personal details and sell-on clauses, you would feel a level of confidence that would get done and get negotiated successfully. But I think you need to have a very strong indication from the player, even if it's verbal, about what his expectations are and what looks likely to happen. But I think you can't afford to let it drag on. I think the longer it goes, then the more you put yourself exposed to being left late in the window trying to bring somebody in. And I'm sure due diligence will have been done in terms of scouting for cover in all eventualities if you're not sure which way it's going to go. But you would like to think that this deep into negotiations, that there is an indication of just where this is going here. But I would certainly think, you would have to put a time frame on it at some point.
I quoted only an excuse on Friday, Sean. The piece saying there'll be no panic buying, just panic. But I caveated that with the fact that I don't think there was any need to panic with Jota, because I think that verbal assurance has come. I think Andrew's on holiday as well, wasn't he? And has he returned from holiday?
They're always not letting me know. He's not texting me to tell me he's landed.
I think someone said he'd returned from holiday, so I think you'll start to see things ramp up now. But I also think that if Ange had a whiff of the fact that Jota wasn't coming, he would have walked by now. Both parties.
Don't get me wrong, Tony, that there will be, there will be lists of alternatives and stuff. But I do think it's still a fair question.
No, I'm not.
Alison's right to say that the lack of qualifiers obviously makes it easier, but I think it's a fair question.
I just think Celtic wouldn't get involved in anything like that, or certainly the manager wouldn't get involved in anything like that if there hadn't been, as Alison says, a verbal reassurance by Jota that he was going to sign for Celtic. He would walk away. He would go elsewhere. And also, we're talking about players being linked with Celtic. I made the point that it's all positions that the Celtic supporters want strengthened in. Left back, defensive, central midfielders. They've not been linked with a winger at all.
Not really. Since the back and link guy, and that was kind of more because he had been offered and stuff.
I think if you're being cynical, I think you would be there will always remain a concern that there's a more lucrative offer coming. That could well tempt him away. So for that very reason, I think the longer it goes, the more concerned that you do become. I think you need to have some kind of assurance that it's going to get across the line. I don't think you want it to drag on and on.
But also think the player's contract's not run out at the end of June as well, that kind of thing. So just maybe putting two and two together and hoping that at the end of June, beginning of July, something more concrete will be announced then.
No, I mean, it's a fair enough point. I mean, Lanky's also make the point, Rabbi Matondo. That's one of the links that we haven't spoken about in here, mostly because there's nothing firming it up yet. Yeah. So as much as the name has been next to Celtic in some news reports, it's not necessarily, as Alison says, you kind of need to firm things up a wee bit before that's counted as a proper link, I would say. The other thing I would say here, which is again a fair point, David Ferguson, has there been any indication whatsoever that he's not signing? Fair point. No, there hasn't. That is what I would say. And as much as Tony, as you mentioned, a potential verbal kind of talk or whatever with a verbal indication that he is going to sign, even if it hasn't said that, it's become common knowledge through reports here and reports in Portugal that Celtic have triggered that clause and that they are in negotiations. So that in itself tells you that it is a conversation rather than simply might have told Angelo I want to come, that kind of thing. But I'll take David's point. I think that is a great point.
Yeah. So I mean, and until you hear otherwise, then I would err on the side of caution that he is going to sign. and I don't think anybody at Celtic is panicking over it. I just think there's a lot of Celtic supporters are, which is the reason why I did the piece on Friday. But we will find out in the fullness of time. But I take on board what Alison's saying as well. He's perfectly within his rights to see if there are any offers elsewhere. But again, if there were offers elsewhere, surely his agent would be saying, you're going over here to talk to such and such. This man's enjoying a world tour in terms of enjoying himself and holidays. He's not been whisked over to somewhere to speak to clubs to our knowledge.
A world tour on a Celtic top as well, which speaks
potentially
volumes, potentially nothing, but I don't know.
Those kind of actions kind of lead you to believe that it will be an affirmative and he will sign for Celtic. So there you go.
Yep.
That's my thoughts. People need to calm down. Which was the thrust of the piece on Friday. If you read it, I was telling people to calm down and take it easy. But again, it's like everything else. As Alison said there, and you've said, there will be hundreds of names linked with Celtic, and it will intensify every day and every passing day if Jota doesn't commit and sign on the dotted line.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Sons of Scotland here, that's what everybody would seem to be hoping for with the away kit launch. So now it's just moved on to the home kit launch. But I think we've learned one thing the last couple of weeks. If Celtic are going to announce his signing, it's going to be at 6:30 on a Friday night. So.
Yes. And on that note, we shall let everybody go and enjoy the sunshine and have a happy Monday. We'll be back tomorrow with a Daily Jota, no doubt. Indeed. Sean, thanks for your contribution. First class.
Cheers,
Alison was always brilliant.
Thank you.
Just free trial, you know the drill. 30-day free trial. Hit that subscribe button, guys. www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. Thank you to our sponsors, One Football. Guys, thank you for your comments. We couldn't do it without you. We couldn't host the show and have one without you. So we always appreciate it. We try and read them out and discuss them as we're going along. But we'll be back tomorrow to do it all again. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Tony.
Cheers, guys.